Nasiruddin Shah claims to miss the India of his childhood, a supposed utopia of harmony, brotherhood, and love, the India free from hate, bigotry, or offense. But the India he describes never existed. His narrative is a fabrication, a string of lies and propaganda. To be sure, I don't believe Nasiruddin Shah is brainwashed. Brainwashing requires a brain, and I see no evidence of one. Instead, I see a man in his twilight years consumed by hatred, bigotry, and ignorance. A man who, for 75 years, has thrived on the subjugation and subservience of Hindus, the same Hindus who have shown him immense love and respect, while he remained silent on the rampant discrimination meted out to them. He embodies the German concept of Schadenfreude, deriving pleasure from others' suffering. In this, he is no different from the millions of fundamentalists of his community who he himself calls Orthodox Muslims. Here I expose Nasiruddin Shah for what he really is, a real-life Gulfam Hassan, a traitor to the cause of justice, equality and fraternity. Nasiruddin Shah speaks of the India of his youth. Let me hold a mirror to the real India, not just of his childhood, but of the decades that shaped him as he grew. Hopefully he will realize that the dirt he rushes to wipe from the mirror is in fact on his own face. Nasiruddin was born in 1950 to the sound of the azan echoing near his home, a sound he says he has cherished ever since, waking to its call with affection. No bigotry there, only love, you'd say. Well, the azan proclaims, quote, "There is no God but Allah, and no one has the right to be worshipped but Him," unquote, Quran 40:62. Nasiruddin Shah knows this well and still loves it. Now imagine a temple loudspeaker blaring 5 times a day. No one has the right to be worshipped but Lord Shiva. Would Nasiruddin Shah call that love, or would he term it bigotry? Nasiruddin grew up in Jawaharlal Nehru's India, a time he fondly recalls as one of brotherhood and freedom and no offense-taking and affable governments that respected dissent. Sure, that same time period saw Nehru's first amendment to the constitution that crushed dissent. Poet Majru Sultanpuri was jailed for a year for calling Nehru Hitler's chela. The first democratically elected communist government in Kerala was dismissed. Dozens of books like Tony Hagen's Nepal, Aubrey Menon's The Ramayana and Bertrand Russell's Unarmed Victory were banned. Films like Mrinal Sen's Neil Akshar Niche and Robson's 9 Hours to Rama were prohibited. Newspapers critical of foreign relations were barred. The RSS's organizer faced censorship. Its publishers were prosecuted. Historian Dharampal was jailed for criticizing Nehru. President Rajendra Prasad's speech was suppressed. Columnists like Vivek and Hindustan Times editor Durga Das were sacked for daring to critique Nehru. Congress leaders demanding Nehru's resignation were arrested. The Times of India lost government ads for opposing state policy. The Crossroads magazine was shut down. Plays, films, songs banned. The People's Theatre Association outlawed. Even the harmonium was barred from All India Radio. This was the free India Nasiruddin Shah misses, where no one took offense, where liberty thrived. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख. Nasiruddin Shah misses the India where justice was meted out equally to every community and no one community was discriminated. Sure. That same time period saw the Hindu court bills passed, the purported attempt to reform only Hindu personal laws while Muslim laws remained untouched. No appeasement, you'd argue, just love. Hindu temples were ruthlessly taken over by the state, ignoring court judgments, their wealth siphoned off, while mosques and churches were left alone. The state, through policies, speeches and culture, subtly taught Hindus to despise their own religion, fostering apathy towards its erosion. Starting with the golden words of Mahatma Gandhi at the dawn of independence itself, urging Hindus to not resent Muslims even if faced with destruction, saying, quote, "If Muslims kill us all, we should face death bravely and we will be ushering in a brave new world." Nehru echoed this, placing the burden of, believe it or not, communal harmony solely on Hindus, presuming their guilt in any communal riot. In glimpses of world history, Nehru painted Babur, the invader who battled infidels and Hindus for Islam, as a cultured knight free of bigotry. Nehru opposed the Somnath temple's consecration, fearing Hindu revivalism. Bollywood vilified Hindu priests and rituals while glorifying Islamic practices. Roads, cities, institutions were named after invaders who razed Hindu temples and culture. Babarpur, Aurangabad, Bakhtiyarpur, Allahabad. From Somnath to Kashi Vishwanath, the scars of these injustices were made visible deliberately, as if to celebrate their lionization, the Hindu humiliation. That is the India that Nasiruddin Shah misses. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख. The following decade, the 70s, the same voices that later championed renaming streets and toppling statues of Western colonialists, Rhodes, Churchill, Pizarro, utilized India's own barbarians. Babur, Aurangzeb, Tipu, Khilji. They celebrated Khusro, who rejoiced in Hinduism's subjugation and Somnath's destruction. They sent chadars to Moinuddin Chishti's shrine, honoring a man who fought alongside Muhammad Ghori, converted Hindus forcibly and vowed to raise temples. They praised Saint Xavier, the architect of the Goa Inquisition that happened after him, that tortured and murdered Hindus, calling their gods ugly and horrible. They normalized Hindu hatred, airbrushing cruelty against them. And Indira Gandhi handed over the education department to the leftists. And India was taught to forget its historical injustices and instead to glorify genocidal figures like Aurangzeb, who demolished Kashi Vishwanath and Keshav Dev temples, murdered millions, beheaded Guru Tegh Bahadur. India was forced to know more about the Mughals than Shivaji, Rana Pratap or Prithviraj Chauhan. Guru Arjan Dev, our Guru, was cooked alive by Jahangir, and yet we romanticized him as Salim in films. We celebrated Nalanda's destroyers and named our children after Taimur, the temple demolisher. India's history was written by those who despised Hindus and Hindustan and bred a nation that glorified self-loathing and honored its vanquishers. Let me not even mention the emergency here that killed, maimed, sterilized, oppressed millions. That is the India that Nasiruddin Shah misses. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख. The next decade, the 80s, saw state capitulation reach its zenith with the overturning of the Supreme Court Shah Bano judgment, ushering in appeasement at an unprecedented scale. That was the India that Nasser now misses. Meanwhile, hundreds of books and films continued to be banned. Draconian laws and policies continued to be promulgated. The land on which Hindu refugees from Pakistan were barely subsisting on was given away to Waqf to control its rent. But that was all love and brotherhood for Nasiruddin Shah. That is the India that he misses. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपने धूल से चेहरा ढका हुआ देख. And then came the decade that trumped it all, and Nasiruddin Shah's joy knew no bounds. Hindus were discriminated at an unmatched level. Lakhs became victims of a genocide in Kashmir. They were driven out of their own land amid jihadi chants of mocking them to leave their women behind. But Nasser misses that India. The draconian Waqf Act was promulgated, usurping Hindu land at will, with no recourse to justice, no equivalent act for Hindus to turn to. But Nasser misses that India. The draconian Places of Worship Act was promulgated, barring Hindus to even approach the courts to plead reclamation of their demolished temples, their most sacred places. But Nasser misses that India. Any semblance of equality and justice that the constitution supposedly enshrines and cherishes were blown to smithereens. The devastating Mumbai bomb blast happened, killing 300 innocent men, women and children, and one of the perpetrators, Yaqub Memon, was hanged to death. Tens of thousands from Nasiruddin Shah's Muslim community attended the funeral of this terrorist in the heart of Mumbai. But Nasser misses that India. That was not bigotry or mainstreaming of violence. No, that was love. That is the India that Nasiruddin Shah misses. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख. Enter the first decade of the millennium. I suppose Nasiruddin Shah's favorite decade that he misses so much, given that Sonia Gandhi and the Congress was in power and the discrimination against Hindus worsened. Only Hindu-run schools were obligated to keep 25% seats reserved for the economically weaker section, not Muslim or Christian-run schools, forcing thousands of Hindu-run schools to be shut down. The state was running madrasas, hosting grand iftar parties, doling out Hajj subsidy. The state was about to enact a law, the Communal Violence Bill, through which only the majority community, i.e. the Hindus, would be held guilty for any communal riot, much as Nehru had desired earlier. But Nasir misses that India, because according to him, that was a secular, just and equal India. That is the India that Nasiruddin Shah misses. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना ढूल से ढका चेहरा देख. Progressing swiftly to the decade of Modi's India, one that Nasir doesn't miss and calls it hate-filled and bigoted. During this decade, over 300 documented cases of hate crimes, lynchings and attempted lynchings by Muslim mobs against Hindus, Dalits and non-Dalits have occurred, including in Ranchi, where a Muslim mob separated bus passengers by religion, intending to burn the bus. Recall Bharat Yadav, lynched after being labelled a kafir. Town after town, city after city, Hindus are fleeing. In Madhopur, a Muslim mob attacked Dalit women during a procession for playing music near a mosque. In Tonk, a Muslim mob threw stones and assaulted a Gujjar wedding procession with sharp weapons. In Barabanki, a 45-member Muslim mob attacked a Hindu religious procession with sticks, injuring 10. In Aligarh, Marma, Jharkhand, Muslim mobs disrupted Ram Navami processions. This happens year after year after year. Pelted stones and blocked Hanuman Jayanti yatras by lying in their path. Forgotten these numerous attacks? Or the Delhi temple vandalism with chants of Allahu Akbar and Nara Takbir? Or Gangaram's lynching for reporting his daughter's abduction? Or the arson and murder spree in Bangalore over alleged blasphemy by a Dalit? Or smashing an Ambedkar statue, brandishing swords and beating Dalit families after they protested a Muslim assaulting Dalit girl Sarita? Or nearly lynching Dalit Jayanti Bhati for wearing a Pathan suit, threatening death if he wore it again? None of these spark outrage from the activist journalist clique of Nasiruddin that spotlights only Muslim victims. Force-feeding beef, coerced conversions, temple destruction, forcing Islamic slogans, tormenting Hindu school children for wearing religious symbols, Kalava, lynching Hindus for marrying Muslims. The list goes on and on and on and on. Flip the scenario. If media only reported Muslim mob attacks on Hindus for a decade, what would you think of India? That only Hindus are targeted by Muslims, though hate crimes aren't exclusive to one community. See? Selective reporting breeds propaganda, and brainless zombies like Nasiruddin help propagate it. When media ignores countless Hindu victims of Muslim mob hate crimes, agenda-driven leaders exploit it. And since 2014, these toxic selectivists, as I call them, claiming to speak truth to power, target only Modi, even for crimes in non-BJP states. When the victim is Hindu, media buries the communal angle. So what counts as a communal hate crime is now the media's call? The killer didn't know the victim was a kafir? Or will you split his motive into religious and non-religious parts? Take Palghar, for example. A saffron-clad sadhu's clear identity isn't enough. If the victim were a skull cap wearing sherwani-clad Maulana handed to lynchers by UP police with a BJP minister watching on, would media still call it non-communal? Propagandists like Nasiruddin are incurable. They're like Rakt Bij. Each drop of their blood spawns more of the same. We know Akhlaq, but who knows Banu, Khitaram Bhil, Savant Rathod, Vidu Jain, Ayub, Farooq, Bharat, and hundreds and thousands more who lie forgotten. Once called out on their blatant bias, these chauthi fail propagandists pivot to the mainstreaming of violence trope, blaming the ruling party. But then again, communal bigotry by politicians, which must be condemned across all parties, cutting across party lines, is only selectively highlighted by zombies like Nasiruddin. They ignore BSP choosing a candidate who offered 51 crores to behead Charlie Hebdo journalists, Mehbooba Mufti picking a rape accused for elections, or mourning terrorist Vani's death, or the Jalandhar church welcoming a rape accused bishop, or the ex-vice president honoring the PFI chief, or a Congress MLA refusing to work for Dalit who didn't vote for him, or an SP legislator slapping a woman at Haji Ali, or Congress leaders demanding Kamlesh Tiwari's hanging, or Manmohan Singh praising Yazin Malik, or Congress's Nilai Kannan wishing for Modi and Shah's deaths, or CM Stalin honoring a Rajiv Gandhi assassination convict, or thousands attending terrorist funerals, or when MLA Tahir Hussain leads a mob to teach kafirs a lesson, or legislators pray at genocidal Aurangzeb's grave. That's not mainstreaming violence. If I do, it's divine. If you do, it's vile. You talk of taking offense, Nasiruddin, when you remain silent on tens of thousands from your community pouring onto the streets demanding the head of a woman who merely quoted the Islamic scriptures, the hadiths? That was not hate. That was not bigotry. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख. Nasiruddin Shah, it is time you understood real discrimination. Is it against Muslims or Hindus when Ram Navami, Hanuman Jayanti, Durga Puja or even Garba events are stoned with impunity? Is it anti-Muslim when Muslims from mosques threaten to behead Nupur or those opposing Azan and Hijab, or when thousands riot over a Facebook post calling Aurangzeb a mass murderer? Is it anti-Muslim when a PM claims minorities have the first claim to resources? Is it anti-Muslim when Kashmiri Hindus are refugees in their own land where 40,000 Rohingya Muslims can settle but not 7 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, and the judiciary says it is too late to prosecute their rapists and murderers? Is it anti-Muslim when the state controls Hindu temples, Hindu beg for Waqf land for festivals, and the government seizes temple lands worth crores? Is it anti-Muslim when the RT Act targets only Hindu schools shutting thousands, or when a law nearly held only Hindus guilty in riots even in minority areas like Kashmir, or when courts reform only Hindu practices leaving others untouched? Or when the Places of Worship Act denies Hindus rights to reclaim demolished temples, or when the Waqf Act lets Muslim claim a 1500-year-old Hindu temple as Islamic land despite Islam's 1300-year-old history? Who's the real victim? And when you accuse Modi of being anti-minority, Nasiruddin, I scoff at your pitiful ignorance. Here are the facts. Pre-2014, minorities 20,000 skill trained, 5% in government jobs, 3 crore scholarships, 70% girl dropout rate. And post-2014, 2 million skill trained, 10% in government jobs, 5 crore scholarships, free UPSC coaching, 30% girl school dropout rate. Modi has given more scholarships to Muslims than Manmohan Singh. AMU funding increased with 90 crore boost. Muslims, 14.2% of the population, getting 31.3% of Awas Yojana homes, 33% of Kisan Samman Nidhi funds, 36% of Mudra Yojana benefits. The Shadu Shagun scheme gives exclusively 51,000 to Muslim girls graduating before marriage. No PM has done more for Muslims than Narendra Modi. Now look at Muslims in a non-BJP Bengal, never been ruled by BJP. Poorer than others, population growing twice as fast as Hindus, only 13% have salaries jobs, India rate 22.1%, only 35% are casual laborers, India 24%, they earn 27 to 40% less than Muslims elsewhere. Muslims are 30% of Bengal's population but only 7% of college teachers, and literacy is 7% below the state average. After 40 years of non-BJP rule, the Disturbed Areas Act brought by Congress forces Muslim into ghettos, whereas in BJP ruled Gujarat, Muslims' rural per capita income surpasses Hindus. They hold proportionate government jobs and literacy is 6% above the national average. Nasiruddin, listen up and understand one thing. You miss the India where the Hindus were discriminated against and did not speak up. And you lament this India where the Hindus are still discriminated against but now they speak up. You and your ilk have fattened yourself on 70 years of appeasement politics, the initial phase of which begins with welfare policies targeting financial aid. These policies often start subtly, based on the flawed notion that Muslim minorities are inherently disadvantaged, perpetually victimized and disproportionately affected by societal conflicts. This narrative posits that they require preferential treatment, which the majority is morally obliged to provide. For one, PM Manmohan Singh's claim that Muslims have the first right on resources exemplifies this mindset. Consequently, the state implements measures like decades-long Hajj subsidies, blanket reservation for Muslims regardless of economic status, lavish taxpayer-funded iftar events, UGC funding for minority institutions reserving 50% seats for minorities, salaries for thousands of Maulvis, scholarships and marriage grants for Muslim women, interest-free loans for shops on Waqf land, and funding for numerous madrasas, all while proclaiming secularism, which supposedly separates state and religion. This welfare evolves very quickly into warfare when laws and policies constitutionally favor one community while discriminating against others. The Waqf Act, for instance, has seized thousands of acres of government, private and temple land in the 10 years, last year, 10 years alone, 20 lakh acres have been usurped. Globally, property disputes are resolved through neutral laws, but in India, The Muslim community benefits from discriminatory laws that disadvantage others. No equivalent Hindu law exists and the state shows no intent to create one for equality. The Waqf operate as a parallel government with its own legislature, board, executive, surveyor and judiciary tribunal. Similarly, the RTE Act combined with the 93rd Amendment exempts Muslim schools from reserving seats for economically weaker sections, while Hindu schools must reserve 25% of their seats, forcing many of them to shut down. The state also bars Hindus from seeking legal recourse to reclaim demolished temples, as I said, controls over 110,000 Hindu temples and their revenue while mosques remain untouched. This imbalance allows mosques to amass wealth for their institutions while temples dwindle, potentially leading to further marginalization of Hindus, some of whom are already leaving Hinduism due to coercive inducements. Meanwhile, terrorists and rioters such as the Coimbatore bombers are released despite judicial rulings, with governments like the DMK framing such acts as minority support. Other instances include Congress leaders defending PFI and SIMI, releasing attackers of police stations. What begins as seemingly harmless scholarships escalates very quickly to freeing terrorists, fostering hubris in one community, believing laws don't apply to them, and anger in another, feeling laws are designed to discriminate against them. This dynamic actually fuels societal conflict, Nasiruddin, marking the final stage of appeasement, warfare. And you take delight in it. Nasiruddin Shah, you miss the India where you delighted in Hindus keeping quiet at rampant discrimination meted out to them. And I love the India where I delight in Hindus not keeping quiet at rampant discrimination still meted out to them. आईने को साफ मत कर गुलफाम हसन, उसमें अपना धूल से ढका चेहरा देख.